You've got warrior monks, pious soldiers, and yeah, the world's first multinational corporation, all rolled into one. We're talking about one of history's most legendary and mysterious organizations, the Knights Templar. But to really get how they became this medieval superpower, we've got to go back. We have to understand the violent, kind of desperate world that created them in the first place.
Okay, so for a Christian back in the Middle Ages, making a pilgrimage to Jerusalem, that was everything. It was the ultimate act of faith, a chance to walk in the footsteps of Christ and pray at the Holy Sepulchre. But here's the thing, this sacred journey had a dark side, a really brutal, hidden cost.
Yeah, the brutal reality was this. That whole romantic idea of a pilgrimage, for thousands of people, it just meant a really violent end. You weren't just taking a peaceful stroll. You were literally gambling with your life. And this is what sparked a totally radical solution. So you might be thinking, wait, didn't the First Crusade fix this? Well, not really. Even after they recaptured Jerusalem, the lands all around it were just lawless. Those roads, the ones winding towards the Holy City, they were a complete gauntlet of constant, unpredictable danger. I mean, the threats were coming from everywhere. You had organized raids coming down from mountain castles, you had swift attacks from Bedouin horsemen out of the desert, and then you just had plain old brutal robbery. People were getting kidnapped, held for ransom, or just flat out murdered. And get this, if you somehow survived all that and made it to the city gates, you still had to pay an extortion fee, a gold coin, just to get into the Holy Sepulchre. The road to salvation was just paved with peril. Okay, so to fix a problem this bad, you needed something completely new. An idea so strange, so full of contradictions, that it could only have been born in the religious fire of the Crusades. The world was about to meet its very first soldier monks.
Yep, it all began with just 9 guys, 9 noble knights who, around the year 1118, looked at all the suffering of these pilgrims and decided to do something. They formed a group they called the Poor Fellow Soldiers of Jesus Christ, and their mission? Super simple, protect the roads. But here's what made them so radical. Right there in the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, the holiest place in Christendom, these battle-hardened warriors took the solemn vows of monks. They gave up wealth, they gave up worldly pleasures, they gave up their own ambitions. They were blending the quiet self-denial of a monastery with the cold, hard steel of the battlefield. So how did they get that famous name? Well, the king of Jerusalem was so impressed with their mission that he gave them a place to live, a headquarters right on the Temple Mount, in a building the Crusaders believed was Solomon's temple. And from that point on, the Poor Fellow Soldiers became known simply as the Templars. Okay, but let's be real. A small band of 9 knights, no matter how dedicated, couldn't police an entire kingdom. If this was going to work, if they were going to grow, they needed structure. They needed a formal code, a rule book that could turn pious warriors into a disciplined and, a holy fighting force. You can see just how fast they went from being this little vigilante group to a pillar of the church. Just 10 years after they started, their leader, a guy named Hugh de Payens, went to Europe to drum up support. And there, with the help of Saint Bernard of Clairvaux, who was basically the most powerful and respected churchman of the age, they got the Pope's official seal of approval at the Council of Troyes. This was their ticket to the big leagues. It changed everything. And you can get a real sense of the kind of life they were meant to live from their rule. I mean, it dictated everything. You could wear a pure white mantle, for example, but absolutely no flashy gold or silver on your gear. You were allowed 3 horses, which was a military necessity, but you couldn't own a locked trunk, because technically you owned nothing personally. Every single detail was designed to enforce this life of extreme, focused discipline.
And yeah, some of the rules were very specific. Just listen to this one, straight from their rule book. It really shows you how seriously they took that vow of chastity. The whole point was to strip away all worldly distractions and focus the warrior completely on God and his duties. Period.
So now they've got the Pope's blessing. They've got a strict rulebook. The Templars were perfectly set up for some explosive growth. And here's the great irony. This order, founded on a vow of poverty, was about to become one of the wealthiest and most powerful institutions on the planet.
And man, the support was just overwhelming. Donations started pouring in from every corner of Europe. Kings gave them land. Nobles gave them entire fortunes. At one point, King Alfonso of Aragon actually tried to leave them his entire kingdom in his will. But the most crucial part? The Pope declared that they were answerable to no one but him. Not kings, not bishops. No one.
They were basically a transnational power, completely above the laws of kings.
So you have to wonder, how did the church justify this? A monk who kills? Well, this idea from St. Bernard is the key. He argued that when a Templar killed an enemy of Christ, it wasn't a sin, it was a glorious act. He even gave it a name, malicide, not homicide. The killing of evil, he said, not the killing of a man. This was a theological revolution, and it's what made the whole idea of a soldier-monk even possible.
And Bernard drew a really sharp contrast. You've got your typical secular knight, right? He fights for pride, for revenge, for money. But the Templar, the soldier of Christ, he fights only for God. He's described as being rough, unkempt, not caring about fancy clothes or glory. For a Templar, dying in battle wasn't failure, it was martyrdom. It was a direct ticket to heaven.
Okay, so the Templars have the rules, they have the theology, and they have the power. But what actually happened when this unique combination of monk and soldier was finally unleashed on the battlefield?
St. Bernard, again, just captured it perfectly. In the monastery, they were meant to be humble, quiet, gentle as lambs. But on the battlefield, they were lions, a ferocious, incredibly disciplined, and utterly fearless heavy cavalry. They quickly became the elite shock troops of the Crusader armies. And all of their symbols really reflected this two-sided nature. You have the famous red cross on their white mantle. That was a symbol of their willingness to be martyred for Christ. Then there was their battle banner, the bussant. It was half black and half white, and it meant one thing. They were fair and peaceful to their friends, but a black and terrible force to their enemies.
And this is a really crucial point to understand. This intense religious fervor, it wasn't just on one side. The promise of martyrdom was an incredibly powerful motivator for their adversaries too. The sources we have show that their enemies were driven by a very similar devotion, a core belief that dying in a holy war would guarantee them a place in paradise.
This next part, it just sends a chill down your spine. Just try to imagine it. You're on a battlefield. Instead of a messy, chaotic battle cry from the charging knights, you hear singing. A disciplined line of heavy cavalry is thundering towards you, not shouting, but chanting a psalm. Not unto us, O Lord, but unto thy name give the praise. It's this quiet, pious, and absolutely terrifying expression of their conviction that they were nothing less than instruments of God's will.
So, when you boil it all down, what were they? Were they pious monks, or were they elite soldiers? The truth is, they were a paradox, a total fusion of two worlds that created something completely new and uniquely powerful for its time. I mean, their whole identity was this complex mix. First, they were monks, right? Bound by those vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience. They were protectors. That was their original mission, after all. They were absolutely elite soldiers, the spearhead of the Crusader armies. And this might be the most significant part, as their wealth just exploded, they became Europe's first international bankers, pioneering financial techniques that, honestly, would help shape the modern world.
So just think about that journey. From 9 knights guarding a dusty road in the Holy Land to a military and financial superpower that answered only to the Pope himself. Their rise was, well, nothing short of spectacular, which of course leaves us with the ultimate nagging question. How could an organization this powerful ever be destroyed?